Hey, I just wanted to do a review of a review, and it's not criticism, but I'd like to correct the matter and present some truths in retrospect of some things said about the Nikon D500. The review was incredibly glowing on the D500. It was stated that the D500 completely whipped the Canon 7D Mark II, and the D500 conclusion was that it just rocked. Well, that's excellent. Now, as far as some statements, such as the D500 is never going to match a full frame for portraiture, well, says who? Says who? Actually, later in the video, the exact quote is, "The D500 is the most usable portrait camera we ever tested." Well, that doesn't seem to match very well. Likewise, it's stated that the Nikon D500 is never going to match a full-frame camera for portraiture. You should get the Nikon D750. Well, point number one, you just stated further on in the video that the D500 is the most usable portraiture camera we have ever tested. And earlier in the video, it's stated that we do not have a Nikon D750 to compare it to. Well, I do have a Nikon D750. That doesn't make much sense. It's called your A doesn't match up with the B. One really interesting statement, and that is that anytime you stick a full-frame lens on a crop sensor camera, any lens, no matter whether it's a crappy lens or a good lens, always takes the best part of that lens, kind of like cutting the bread crust off of a hunk of bread. And you end up using the best part of the bread, or the best part of the lens. A statement was made that the D500 compared to the Nikon D810 uses less than half the optical sharpness of full-frame lenses. If you're trying to say that the D500 is a cropped image of the projection of that lens, that would be one thing, but the statement that, let's examine the statement. The D500 uses less than half the optical sharpness of a full-frame lens. Well, that's absolutely not true at all. Any crop sensor camera, whether it's a crappy crop sensor camera or an awesome one like the D500, always uses the best part of the lens. Any lens, whether it's an awesome lens or a crappy lens, is always sharpest at its center. It's also brightest at its center. This is why vignetting occurs at the edge of lenses. So sometimes the lens projection is really crappy in the corners. We'll talk about a lens that is crappy in the corners. It has bad vignetting, has a poor resolution. So this statement that the D500 uses less than half the optical sharpness, that's not true. You see, any lens has no idea what size sensor is underneath it. It projects the exact same. This is a misnomer between full frame and crop sensor cameras. Every lens has no idea what is underneath it. It drops the same light. So statements that it uses less than half the optical sharpness, this is A, absolutely not true, and B, completely incorrect, because any crop sensor camera always uses the very best part of any lens, whether it's a good lens or a bad lens. Ultimately the review is good because the reviewer, like myself, stated many of the same things, that the D500 is startlingly good. It's shocking, and it is. It's really awesome. But to state stuff like the D500 is never going to match a full frame for portraiture, says who? That's absolutely incorrect. Statements such as low noise is a priority for you, then the D750, which will be twice as clean. Well, I've got test shots comparing using the exact same lens, exact same point in time in my just prior video that I just made. That's absolutely not true. Not only is the Nikon D750 not twice as clean, the Nikon D500 is cleaner. A, due to post-sensor processing. B, due to pixel pitch. And, better overall SNR firmware in-camera, straight out of camera image is better, superior. I've got the test shots to prove it. And this reviewer says we do not have the D750 to compare it to. So, yeah. That means it's a baseless statement. It's a baseless claim. I'm happy to see that it's such an incredibly positive review of the Nikon D500, but statements like full frame camera like the D750 is better for most things, landscapes, portraits, general shooting, low light. Well, let me tell you something. The Nikon D500 is absolutely superior for general shooting, absolutely superior for low light, absolutely, and very importantly, nobody ever mentions this, absolutely superior for low light autofocus acquisition over the Nikon D750. And the D750 has an autofocus assist lamp. The Nikon D500 does not, but it still does a much better job than the Nikon D750. So this statement is absolutely and palpably incorrect. Not my opinion, hardcore, flat out incorrect. Flat out incorrect. Thank you for watching. Catch you later.